Welcome. You've stepped into a quiet place. A place that only comes alive after dark, where every sound feels closer than it should be. Tonight's theme is 4 disturbing true end-of-summer horror stories. The season is ending. The air's still warm, but strange things linger in the heat. Moments that refuse to fade when the sun goes down. You'll hear stories of those last nights, when laughter dies out. The road's empty and something waits in the quiet. Some found out too late that summer doesn't end gently. It just changes shape. These aren't the usual stories you scroll past before bed. They come from people who never wanted to remember, and you might wish you hadn't listened so closely. Most people who watch these stories never subscribe. Maybe they forget, or maybe after hearing them they can't sleep long enough to. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I want to see who's still awake this late. You might want to leave a light on. Here are tonight's encounters. The first night at the lake house, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't even the usual anxiety of being in a new place. It was something else. Something wrong. The air inside that house felt thick, like breathing through wet cloth. The others had already passed out. My girlfriend Jess and our 2 friends Mark and Emily. We'd come for one last summer weekend before college started again. A cheap Airbnb, a lake, beers and bad decisions. That was the plan. But when the house went quiet, I kept hearing clicking. Not the bugs outside. Not the old pipes or the ceiling fan. This was sharper. Metallic. Like a pen tapping glass. From somewhere downstairs. I told myself it was the dock outside, maybe the boats hitting against it. But the dock was a good 100 feet from the living room. The sound was inside. The digital clock glowed 1:43 a.m. when I finally sat up. My throat was dry, my chest tight. I remember thinking the air smelled faintly like old wood and damp towels, but under it, something sour like wet coins. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and just listened. The house creaked like it was breathing. Click, click, click. I whispered, "Jess?" But she didn't stir. I grabbed my phone, using the flashlight instead of the lamp because the switch by the bed didn't work. Something I'd noticed earlier. I remember that clearly now because I should have taken it as a sign. When I opened the bedroom door, the hallway light flickered once and then went out completely. For a second, I stood in the dark, just hearing my heartbeat and the hum of distant crickets. Then the clicking started again, closer this time, right below me. The lake house had that old wooden structure where sound travels, footsteps echo, boards flex. And when something moves, you feel it through your feet. I felt it now, a shift in the floor. Someone was down there. I whispered Jess's name again. Louder. Nothing. Part of me wanted to wake her, but another part of me, the dumber part, didn't want to look paranoid. So I told myself I'd just go check. Quick. The stairs groaned under my weight. Every step made me feel like I was breaking some rule of nature, like something was watching, waiting for me to move so it could move too. Downstairs, the air was colder. I could see my breath faintly in the flashlight beam. That didn't make sense. It was late August. The living room looked normal at first. The couch, the half-empty beer cans, the lake out the big glass doors, moonlight turning it into black silk. Click. My light swung to the corner. There was a tall mirror leaning against the wall by the entryway. One of those vintage ones with an ornate frame. I swear it hadn't been there earlier. The sound was coming from that direction. Click. I took a step closer. The beam caught my own reflection. Pale face, wide eyes, hair messy. But behind me, just barely, I thought I saw someone standing on the stairs. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back, my reflection was closer. I didn't move. I know I didn't. I even held my breath. But my reflection had taken one step forward. For a heartbeat, I just froze, waiting for my brain to explain it. Maybe a trick of light, some delay, anything. But then it smiled, and I didn't. The flashlight flickered, and I dropped it. The light spun across the floor, throwing shadows across the room. When I grabbed it again and pointed it back at the mirror, the reflection was normal. Just me. Staring. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. My hands were shaking. I remember whispering out loud, "Nope, nope, not doing this," before heading straight for the stairs. Halfway up, I felt the temperature rise suddenly, like stepping into a warm exhale. Then, faintly, I heard Jess whisper my name. "Tyler." I looked up. She was standing at the top of the stairs, her hair over her face, like she'd just woken up. But something about her voice wasn't right. It was flat, like a recording. I said, babe, you okay?" She didn't move. The light flickered again, quick flashes across her face, and when in one of them, I saw her eyes. They weren't open. They were just black, like the glass of the lake outside. Then she was gone. Just gone. I ran up the stairs, heart punching against my ribs, calling her name, tearing open the bedroom door. And there she was under the covers, fast asleep. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. I stood there shaking for a full minute, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I wanted to wake her up, tell her everything, but something deep down told me not to. Not yet. I didn't sleep again that night. I just sat by the window watching the moonlight ripple across the lake until morning. When the others woke up, I tried to act normal. Made coffee. Pretended I hadn't just seen my reflection move on its own. Mark was the first to mention it. "Hey," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Did one of you move that mirror last night? The one by the door?" I froze. "What do you mean?" He frowned. "It's gone." I turned to look. The wall by the entryway was empty. No mirror. No marks where it had leaned. Nothing. Jess laughed it off, said maybe the owners took it, or maybe Mark was half asleep and saw something else. But I could see the confusion in his face. He knew it had been there. We went out on the lake that day trying to shake it off. Sunlight, drinks, the sound of the water, normal life creeping back in. For a while it worked, but that night, around 2 a.m., I woke again. Same feeling. Same tension. The air was heavy, pressing down on my chest, and outside the window across the dark lake I saw something glowing. Not the moon. Lower. Closer to the water. Dozens of small, flickering lights, like fireflies. But they weren't moving like bugs. They were standing still, forming a line. And in the middle of that glowing line there was a shape, a tall human shape, watching me from the other side of the lake. I should have woken everyone up right then. But I didn't. I just stood there staring through the glass, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The lights across the lake weren't moving. They were too bright, too still. And that tall shape, in the middle, it looked like a person, but stretched somehow. Wrong proportions. I blinked. For a split second, all the lights went out, total darkness. And when they came back on, the shape was gone. I backed away from the window. My heart was racing so hard I felt it in my teeth. "Tyler." Jess's sleepy voice came from behind me. I turned fast. She was sitting up in bed, hair messy, squinting at me. Real this time. Her voice had warmth in it. "What are you doing?" she murmured. "Just..." I swallowed, trying to sound normal. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I saw something outside." She mumbled something, laid back down, and was out again in seconds. I stood there for another minute before pulling the curtain shut. I didn't want to see the lake anymore. The next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. The sun was up, the air was warm again, and the world felt normal. Mark was making pancakes, blasting music from his phone. Emily was sitting at the counter scrolling through Instagram. Jess was outside, brushing her hair on the deck. For a few minutes, I let myself believe I'd just freaked out over nothing. Then Mark pointed out toward the water. "Hey man," he said. "You see that?" I followed his gaze. Out near the dock, something was floating, just under the surface. At first I thought it was a log, But when the sun hit it just right, I saw pale skin. I was already moving before I realized it, running down the deck stairs to the edge of the dock. My reflection broke apart on the rippling water. It was a mannequin. A human-sized mannequin, dressed in a white summer dress, its head tilted slightly to the side, its glassy eyes staring up through the water. "What the actual hell?" I whispered. Jess came running after me. "Tyler, what is that?" I don't know. Someone's prank?" Mark and Emily joined us, all of us just standing there, staring down at the thing. The longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. The eyes weren't perfectly shaped like a mannequin's should be. One of them was slightly off-center, and the lips looked almost real, like skin that had dried out. Mark crouched down, grabbed a stick, and poked at it. When he did, the mannequin shifted. Something about the movement made my stomach drop. It looked heavy. Too heavy. Like a body. "Okay, nope," Emily said. "That's gross. We should call the owners or something." But when Mark looked down again, his face went pale. "It's gone." The water rippled once, twice, and then nothing. Just the lake. We all stood there for a long time, waiting for it to resurface. It didn't. That afternoon, Jess tried to convince us to leave early, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to look scared. I kept telling everyone it was probably just some weird floating doll, maybe from a boat, maybe from another house. By sunset, we'd convinced ourselves it wasn't worth ruining the weekend over. We grilled burgers. We laughed. We drank too much. For a little while, it actually felt like summer again. But that night, around midnight, I started feeling it again. That heaviness in the air. I was sitting on the porch alone, scrolling through my phone. Everyone else had gone inside. The night was warm, the crickets loud, the lake perfectly still. Then I saw the reflection of light on the water. Not fireflies this time. Flashlights, moving along the opposite shore, slow and deliberate. I counted 3. I leaned forward, squinting. The lights were weaving through the trees, almost like they were searching for something. I couldn't see who held them, just the beams, cutting through fog. Then one of the lights stopped, turned directly toward me. It stayed like that for maybe 10 seconds, just staring. Then it blinked twice, off, on, like a signal. I got up fast and went inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them thinking I was losing it. But when I looked out again from the kitchen window, all 3 lights were gone. I went to bed and laid there listening. At 3:17 a.m., the power went out. The house went completely dark. The silence that followed was the kind that hums in your bones. Then, from downstairs, a single click, like a camera shutter. I froze. "Jess," I whispered. "Did you hear that?" She didn't move. She was breathing steadily, deeply asleep. Another click. Closer. Then another. I slid out of bed, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I used my phone light again, inching toward the door. As soon as I opened it, the hallway light flickered just once, and I saw a shape at the end. Tall. Still. Facing me. The light went out. When it came back on, the hallway was empty. I stood there shaking, then forced myself forward. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. Halfway down the hall, I stepped on something, a photo. I picked it up. It was a printed Polaroid, fresh, still damp. It was a picture of me, standing in that exact hallway, holding that exact photo. I dropped it. My stomach turned to ice. I stumbled back into the room, slammed the door, and shook Jess awake. She blinked, groggy and annoyed. "What are you doing?" I held up the photo with shaking hands. "Someone's in the house. They took this." Her expression changed immediately. She sat up fast. "Where?" "I don't know," I whispered. "Down the hall. I think I saw." A loud knock cut through my words. 3 slow, Heavy knocks. On the bedroom door. Jess gasped. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a lamp. "Who's there?" I yelled. Silence. Another knock, and then a voice. It was Mark's. "Hey man, you up?" I exhaled hard, lowering the lamp a little. "Jesus, dude, what the hell are you doing?" No response. "Mark?" Another knock. Same rhythm. I looked at Jess. Her face was white. "Tyler," she whispered. "That's not his voice." I froze. Jess was right. It sounded like Mark's voice. Same tone, same pitch. But there was something off about it. Too slow, too calm, like someone playing a recording of him through a wall. I didn't move. Another knock. 3 times, just like before, Jess whispered. "Don't open it." I nodded, even though my hands were shaking so bad the lamp's cord was rattling against the table. Then, silence. The kind that eats everything. After a few seconds, I worked up the nerve to whisper, "Mark, if that's you, say something normal." Nothing. Just the faint hum of the house settling. Then from outside the door the same voice said, "Something." Normal. I swear my blood turned to ice. Jess's hand clamped around my arm, nails digging into my skin. I backed us both toward the window. It was our only way out. I yanked the curtains aside and froze again. Out on the lawn, barely visible in the moonlight, stood 3 people. Not moving. Not talking. Just watching the house. Their outlines were thin, wrong, like someone had stretched human shadows into real bodies. Jess gasped.
"Who are they?"
"I don't know," I whispered. Then one of them lifted their hand. I saw the gleam of a camera flash. Click. The sound from earlier. I felt it. That same pressure in the air, heavy and electric, like the world was holding its breath. Then the bedroom door creaked open on its own. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. But I could feel something there. The hair on my arm stood up. Jess whispered, "Tyler, we have to go. Right now." I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the window. We were on the 2nd floor, but the roof of the porch was right below us. We could drop down from there. I opened the window quietly, helped her climb out first. She slid down onto the roof tiles, barefoot, shaking. As I followed, something brushed my ankle, cold and wet like fingertips. I jerked away, fell half out the window, caught myself on the sill. When I looked back inside, the Polaroid was lying in the middle of the floor again. Only now it showed both of us at the window. We didn't wait. We dropped down to the porch roof, then to the ground and sprinted toward the car parked by the tree line. The whole time, I could hear movement behind us and soft, quick footsteps that never got closer, never got farther, just there. When I looked over my shoulder, I saw flashes, camera flashes, white bursts cutting through the dark. By the time we reached the car, I was shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the door. It was unlocked. That stopped me. I was sure I'd locked it earlier. I opened the driver's side door, and the smell hit me. Rotting lake water. Something was sitting in the back seat. A mannequin. The same one from the lake. Its dress still dripping. But this time, its head was turned toward me. Its lips were cracked open, teeth too human, Jess screamed. I slammed the door shut and stumbled back. That's when the porch light flicked on behind us. Mark and Emily were standing there, both in pajamas, blinking at us like we were insane. "Dude," Mark called out. "What the hell are you doing?" I pointed at the car, gasping. There's something," but when I turned back, the back seat was empty, no mannequin. No water, just damp seats. Emily looked half asleep, holding a blanket around her shoulders. "You guys okay?" I didn't know what to say. My brain couldn't make sense of anything. "We need to leave," I said finally. "Right now," Mark frowned. "Leave? It's like 2 a.m., man." "Something's out there," Jess said. Her voice cracked. "We saw people. On the lawn. Taking pictures." Mark looked out across the yard. "There's no one here." And he was right, the lawn was empty. He sighed. "Okay, listen. You two are tired. Maybe you drank too much. Let's go back inside, sleep it off. We can leave first thing in the morning." I wanted to argue, but Jess was shaking so hard I just nodded. I couldn't drag her through the woods at night. Not without proof. Back inside, everything looked normal. too normal. The mirror was back, leaning against the entryway again. I stopped dead in my tracks. Mark, that wasn't there earlier. He glanced at it, confused.
What, the mirror?
Yeah, it was. You probably just didn't notice. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him I'd watched that thing disappear, but I didn't. We went upstairs again. Jess refused to sleep near the window, so we moved the bed closer to the wall. Mark and Emily's room was across the hall. I heard them laughing softly, trying to make it all feel normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was listening. At some point, I dozed off. I don't know for how long. When I woke up again, Jess was gone. The sheets were still warm where she'd been lying. I sat up fast, whispering her name. No answer. I grabbed my phone light and opened the door. The hallway was pitch black. Jess? A faint sound came from downstairs, water dripping, then something else, a voice, Tyler. It sounded like her. I followed it, step by step, down the creaking stairs, every instinct in my body screaming to stop. When I reached the bottom, I saw her, standing by the mirror, her back to me. Jess? I whispered. She turned around slowly, but her reflection didn't. The real Jess looked right at me, eyes wide and terrified. Her reflection stayed facing away. Tyler, she said, voice trembling. It's not me, I didn't understand at first. Then her reflection smiled, and the real Jess didn't. The reflection lifted its hand and pressed it flat against the inside of the glass. The sound it made wasn't skin on glass, it was wet, like a palm pressing through water. Then it started pushing. The glass rippled. I grabbed Jess and pulled her back, stumbling over a chair. The mirror tipped forward, shattering across the floor. Except there was no glass, only water. Thick, black water spilling out across the wood. And from that water, something started crawling out. It's been 3 weeks it crawled out of the mirror like it had been waiting there forever. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. The thing had the same shape as Jess. Same height, same hair, same dress. But its movements were wrong. Too fluid, like it was swimming through air. And its skin. It glistened slick and gray like something pulled from the bottom of the lake. Jess screamed and stumbled back, her hand clutching mine so tightly it hurt. The figure tilted its head toward us, eyes pitch black. Then it smiled, her smile only wider. Unnatural. Water kept spilling from the broken mirror, pooling around our feet. It was freezing, soaking through my socks, smelling like algae and rust. I yanked Jess toward the stairs. Go! The thing lunged forward, splashing through the water. I heard its steps slap against the floor like wet hands. We ran. I didn't look back until we reached the top step. It was standing at the bottom, looking up at us, grinning. Then it said, perfectly, in Jess's voice, Tyler, come back. I slammed the bedroom door shut and shoved the dresser in front of it. Jess was crying, shaking uncontrollably. What the hell is that? She whispered. I don't know, I said. Just stay quiet. From the other side of the door came the sound of dripping and steady and slow. Then the faint creak of wood bending under weight. It was climbing the stairs. Every creak felt closer, heavier. My heartbeat was loud enough to drown everything else. Then silence. For a moment, I thought maybe it had stopped. Then a whisper came through the keyhole. Let me in. I backed away, dragging Jess toward the window. We're leaving now. She didn't argue this time. We climbed out onto the porch roof again. My hands were shaking so hard I almost slipped, but adrenaline kept me moving. Below us, the lawn shimmered faintly with reflected light. The fireflies were back, only now I could see what they really were. Phones. Hundreds of phones held by figures standing, shoulder to shoulder at the tree line, each one filming the house. Their screens blinked like little camera flashes. Jess whispered, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" Before I could answer, the front door below us creaked open. The watery version of Jess stepped out, tilting its head up toward us, and all the figures in the trees started to move forward. I grabbed Jess's arm. We're running to the car. Don't stop, no matter what. We slid down the porch roof, hit the ground hard, and sprinted. My lungs burned, the air thick with the smell of rain and something sour, like lake mud. Behind us came the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them, splashing and slapping through the wet grass. When we reached the car, I didn't even check the back seat this time. I just flung the door open, shoved Jess in, and turned the key. It started, I floored it. Gravel spraying behind us as we tore down Firefly Road. The headlights sliced through fog, and in the mirror I saw them, the lights following. The crowd, the reflection, Jess, all of it. They weren't running. They were gliding, moving in perfect unison, faces blank, eyes glowing faintly like the lake's surface at night. Jess was crying beside me. "They're not real," she kept saying. "They're not real." But when I glanced at her for a split second, I saw water dripping from her hair. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The road wound along the edge of the lake, the water beside us black and endless. I pressed harder on the gas, praying we'd hit a main road soon. That's when the radio turned on by itself. Static at first. Then a voice, my voice. "You shouldn't have come back." I hit the power button, but it stayed on. The voice kept talking and repeating the same words slower each time. Jess screamed, "Tyler, watch out." It's been 3 weeks, it crawled out of the mirror like it had been waiting there forever. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. The thing had the same shape as Jess, same height, same hair, same dress, but its movements were wrong. Too fluid, like it was swimming through air, and its skin, it glistened slick and gray like something pulled from the bottom of the lake. Jess screamed and stumbled back, her hand clutching mine so tightly it hurt. The figure tilted its head toward us, eyes pitch black. Then it smiled, her smile only wider. Unnatural. Water kept spilling from the broken mirror, pooling around our feet. It was freezing, soaking through my socks, smelling like algae and rust. I yanked Jess toward the stairs. "Go!" The thing lunged forward, splashing through the water. I heard its steps slap against the floor like wet hands. We ran. I didn't look back until we reached the top step. It was standing at the bottom, looking up at us, grinning. Then it said, perfectly, in Jess's voice, "Tyler, come back." I slammed the bedroom door shut and shoved the dresser in front of it. Jess was crying, shaking uncontrollably. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said. "Just stay quiet." From the other side of the door came the sound of dripping, steady and slow. Then the faint creak of wood bending under weight. It was climbing the stairs. Every creak felt closer, heavier. My heartbeat was loud enough to drown everything else. Then silence. For a moment I thought maybe it had stopped. Then a whisper came through the keyhole. "Let me in." I backed away, dragging Jess toward the window. "We're leaving, now." She didn't argue this time. We climbed out onto the porch roof again. My hands were shaking so hard I almost slipped, but adrenaline kept me moving. Below us, the lawn shimmered faintly with reflected light. The fireflies were back. Only now I could see what they really were. Phones. Hundreds of phones held by figures standing shoulder to shoulder at the tree line, each one filming the house. Their screens blinked like little camera flashes. Jess whispered, "Oh my God, and what are they doing?" Before I could answer, the front door below us creaked open. The watery version of Jess stepped out, tilting its head up toward us, and all the figures in the trees started to move forward. I grabbed Jess's arm. "We're running to the car, don't stop, no matter what." We slid down the porch roof, hit the ground hard, and sprinted. My lungs burned, the air thick with the smell of rain and something sour, like lake mud. Behind us came the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them splashing and slapping through the wet grass. When we reached the car, I didn't even check the back seat this time. I just flung the door open, shoved Jess in, and turned the key. It started. I floored it, gravel spraying behind us as we tore down Firefly Road. The headlights sliced through fog, and in the mirror I saw them, the lights following. The crowd, the reflection, Jess, all of it. They weren't running, they were gliding, moving in perfect unison, faces blank, eyes glowing faintly like the lake's surface at night. Jess was crying beside me. "They're not real," she kept saying. "They're not real." But when I glanced at her, for a split second, I saw water dripping from her hair. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The road wound along the edge of the lake, the water beside us black and endless. I pressed harder on the gas, praying we'd hit a main road soon. That's when the radio turned on by itself. Static at first, then a voice. My voice. You shouldn't have come back. I hit the power button, but it stayed on. The voice kept talking, repeating the same words, slower each time. Jess screamed, "Tyler, watch out!" Something stood in the middle of the road. I swerved, the tires skidding on gravel, and the car spun, the world tilting, trees and stars and headlights blurring together, until we crashed through the guardrail and down the embankment. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the water closing over us. Cold, heavy, like it had been waiting. When I woke up, it was daylight. The car was half submerged in the shallows of the lake. My head hurt. My hands were cut. Jess was gone. I clawed my way out of the water, screaming her name, searching the shoreline. Nothing. Just my own echo coming back at me. I don't know how long I sat there before I saw movement on the other side of the lake. A figure, standing on the dock. Same build, same hair, same clothes. It was Jess. I shouted her name. She didn't respond. Then she raised her hand, the same way the others had, and even from across the lake, I could see the gleam of a phone screen. Click, a flash. The sound echoed across the water. Then she turned and walked slowly back toward the trees. I found the strength to climb the hill and follow the road back to the house. The police came later. They said they'd found no one in the lake, no footprints on the shore, no other cars. They told me it was shock, trauma, that maybe I'd imagined it, but they didn't see the photos. When they towed my car from the lake, the back seat was covered in Polaroids, hundreds of them, all showing the same thing. Me sleeping from different angles. Some from inside the house, some from outside the window, and in every single one there was something standing behind me. A woman, soaked to the bone, smiling, since Firefly Road. I've been staying in a motel 2 towns over, jumping every time I hear a camera shutter. The mirror from the house and the one that shouldn't exist anymore. It showed up yesterday, propped against the wall outside my door. When I looked into it, my reflection was smiling again. I wasn't. It lifted its hand and held up something small and square. A Polaroid, from where I'm standing right now. I can't see the photo clearly, but I think it's me sitting here writing this, and just behind me, in the reflection, the water's starting to ripple. The woods never really go quiet at night, unless something's wrong. That's what I remember most about the first evening back at Camp Hollow Pines. The silence. Not peaceful, not calm, not hollow. It was supposed to be a reunion. A one last summer kind of thing before they tore the place down. Me, Kara, Jason, and Ben, the 4 of us who used to work there as counselors back in 2009. We hadn't spoken in years, but when Kara found the old group chat and sent the invite, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. I told myself it would be nostalgic. Closure, maybe. But the second we turned down that dirt road and saw the broken camp sign half buried in weeds, I felt it. Like the woods themselves were holding their breath. No birds. No wind. Just the crunch of our tires on gravel and the occasional squeak of the suspension. Kara leaned forward from the back seat, her voice tight. "It looks smaller than I remember," Ben laughed. "Everything does when you're not a kid anymore." I didn't laugh. I kept my eyes on the gate ahead, hanging crooked on its hinges. The hand-painted words Camp Hollow Pines were faded almost to nothing, and someone had spray-painted a message across it in red. "Don't stay after dark." Jason whistled low. "That's inviting." Ben killed the engine, and for a moment we all just sat there. Nobody moved. The air smelled like damp pine needles and rust, like something old and forgotten. Then Kara said, "Well, we didn't drive 4 hours to Chicken Out now." She pushed open the door, and the sound shattered the silence. The cabins were still standing, barely. The main lodge's roof had partially caved in, and vines crawled through the window frames like veins. The lake, and the one where we used to take the kids canoeing, was coated in green scum. Even the dock looked sick, boards sagging into the water. This place should have been condemned years ago, I muttered. Ben chuckled. Perfect for a horror movie though, right? Kara rolled her eyes. You're such an ass. Jason and I carried the coolers into what used to be Cabin 3, our old counselor cabin. The air inside was stale and warm, thick with dust and that faint, sweet smell of rot. There were still old drawings pinned to the corkboard, faded crayon scribbles of stick figures swimming in campfires. One had my name written at the bottom in messy handwriting, Counselor Nate. I didn't remember the kid who drew it, but looking at it made my stomach tighten. I don't know why. We unpacked, cracked open beers, tried to make it feel normal. Kara played music on her phone, but it sounded tinny and small in the empty cabin. By sunset, Ben had started a fire in the pit outside. We sat around it like we used to, the woods stretching endlessly behind us. So, Jason said after a while, "Does anyone ever talk to the Hollow Pines ghost?" Kara groaned. "You're not seriously bringing that up." "Oh, come on," Ben said, smirking. "You all remember the story. The kid who wandered off during the storm? Never found him?" "Eli," I said quietly. They all looked at me. I don't know why I remembered the name. I hadn't thought about that summer in years. But the second Ben said ghost, it came back like something clicking into place. "Yeah," Jason said. "Eli, what, like 10 years old? He was in your group, right, Nate?" "Yeah," I said. "He disappeared after lights out. We searched all night. Police came the next morning. They never found a body. The fire cracked and nobody said anything for a few seconds. Kara finally spoke. It wasn't your fault I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I remembered something else, something I never told anyone. That same night, around 3 a.m., I'd woken up to hear footsteps outside the cabin, small ones, bare feet slapping the wood of the porch. When I looked out the window, I saw a shape standing in the rain. Just standing there, head tilted toward the lake, and I swear when the lightning flashed, I saw his face. Eli's face, eyes wide open, mouth full of lake water. But I'd told myself I imagined it. That memory was just exhaustion and guilt twisted together. At least, that's what I believed until that moment sitting by the fire, when the smell hit me. Wet wood, algae, like lake water. I looked around, trying to see if anyone else noticed it, but they were still talking, laughing weakly. Then Jason froze mid-sentence. "Did you hear that?" We all went quiet. From somewhere deep in the woods came a faint sound, like metal clinking. Then, the softest splash. Ben grabbed a flashlight, aiming it toward the lake. Probably a raccoon or something. But the beam caught something on the dock, a single footprint, small, bare, wet. Kara stood up fast. "Nope, not doing this." "Relax," Ben said. "Probably from earlier when we walked down there." "No," she said, her voice shaking. "That print's tiny, like a kid's." The woods had gone completely silent again. Even the insects stopped. The fire popped once and I nearly jumped. Jason laughed nervously. "We're all just freaking ourselves out. Places old, weird sounds happen." He stopped, because something was moving behind the cabin. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Ben swung the flashlight toward the sound, but the beam just hit trees. Empty space. Then, right behind us, a whisper. Low, wet. "Counselor Nate." The voice was small, childlike. Every nerve in my body went numb. Ben whipped around. Light cutting through smoke and dust, but there was nothing there. The firelight flickered against the trees, and for a second I thought I saw a shadow standing just beyond it. Thin, still with something dripping from its hands. Then it was gone. Kara was already grabbing her bag. "I'm not staying here, I'm serious. Let's go." Ben tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "Probably some local kid messing with us." "Then where is he?" She snapped. We all looked around. The woods seemed to stretch forever, black and empty. I realized I was still holding my beer, and it was shaking in my hand. I set it down and stood up. "Let's check the dock. If someone's screwing with us, that's where they'd be." Nobody wanted to go, but nobody wanted to be the one who said no. So we went. The four of us walking single file down the narrow path to the lake. The flashlight beam bounced over the dirt trail, catching glimpses of tree trunks, spider webs, fragments of old rope swings. When we reached the water, the air felt colder. The dock groaned under our weight. The flashlight beam rippled across the surface of the lake, black and still. There was nothing. No kid. No movement. Just that faint smell of rot again. Then Jason pointed. "What's that?" At the edge of the dock, nailed into the wood, was a rusted metal tag, the kind the camp used for inventory. The numbers were almost unreadable from age, but when I crouched to look closer, I saw the name etched faintly beneath them, ELI 2009. None of us said a word for a long time. We just stared at that rusted tag nailed into the dock like it had been waiting for us all these years. Kara finally broke the silence. "Tell me that's some kind of sick joke." Ben tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Someone probably put it there after the whole thing, like a memorial or something." "Memorials don't get nailed down," Jason muttered. The lake gave off a faint ripple, like something had just moved beneath the surface. We all stepped back. I swallowed hard. "Let's go. We shouldn't be down here." The beam of the flashlight jittered across the water as Ben turned, and I caught a glimpse of something pale drifting just below the surface. It was gone before I could say anything. Back at the cabin, Kara wanted to leave. Jason agreed. Ben kept insisting we were letting nostalgia mess with our heads. "It's just a tag," he said, pacing. "Kids die at camp sometimes. The owners probably—" "Stop!" I didn't want to hear it. He raised his hands. "Fine. But if we leave, we drive 4 hours in the dark, and I'm not exactly sober." We argued until the fire burned down to orange coals. The wood stayed silent, heavy. In the end, we decided to stay until morning. Doors locked. One more night. Ben took first watch in the main room, claiming he'd stay up with a beer and his phone flashlight. The rest of us tried to sleep. I must have drifted off because when I opened my eyes again, the room was pitch black. The fire outside had died, and the only sound was a faint tapping. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was rain on the roof, but when I held my breath, I realized it was coming from inside the cabin, from the window. I sat up slowly. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Tap, tap. Something was touching the glass. I leaned forward, straining to see. The moonlight was barely enough to outline shapes. Bunks, the doorway, the window itself. A small hand pressed against the glass. I bit down on a shout. It was child-sized. The fingers were thin, skin pale and slick like it was underwater. "Ben?" I whispered, hoping maybe he was pulling some drunk prank. The hand slid down the pane, leaving a streak of moisture. Then it was gone. I grabbed the flashlight from beside my bed, switched it on, and aimed it out the window. Nothing. Just trees and fog. The tapping stopped, but the smell hit me. That same lake water rot. Stronger now, so thick I could taste it. I backed away, shaking. That's when I noticed Kara's bed was empty. I bolted to the main room. Ben was snoring on the couch, phone still glowing beside him. Jason was asleep too. No Kara. The front door was cracked open. A cold gust moved through the cabin, carrying the scent of wet pine and something metallic. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The camp was dark. No wind, no crickets. Just my own footsteps on the damp dirt. "Kara?" I hissed nothing. The beam cut across the clearing and caught a flash of white by the mess hall. A shirt. She was standing there, barefoot, facing the woods. "Kara." She didn't react. When I got closer, I realized she was humming. A soft, tuneless sound that didn't belong to her, like a lullaby played backward. Her eyes were open but unfocused. "Kara," I said again, touching her arm. She blinked, like snapping out of a trance, then gasped. "Nate, how did I get out here?" "I don't know," I said. "Let's get inside." As we turned back, she stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" I listened. Somewhere behind us, faint splashing from the lake. We both turned. There was a figure standing on the dock, small, still. Kara's hand clamped around mine. "Please tell me that's Ben." It wasn't. The flashlight shook in my hand, the beam quivering over the boards, and the figure began to move, walking slowly toward the shore. Each step made the wood groan. Then halfway down the dock, it stopped. The beam caught its face for just a moment, Eli eyes gray and bloated, lips split from water, skin the color of milk. And then he spoke, voice bubbling like through a throat full of lake water. "You didn't find me," Kara screamed. The figure vanished. No splash, no ripple. Just gone. We ran. I don't even remember the path back, only that the flashlight flickered the whole way. When we burst into the cabin, Ben sat up, swearing. "What the hell?" Kara was crying, shaking, unable to speak. I told him what we saw. He didn't believe me until he smelled it too. That reek of lake water following us inside. He gagged. "Jesus, it's on you." We looked down. Our shoes were dripping, but we hadn't gone near the water. None of us slept. We sat together in the center of the cabin, all the lights on. Jason clutched a kitchen knife he'd found around 3 a.m. Ben said, "Listen," and killed the lantern. For a moment, I thought I heard it too, faint voices outside, children laughing. Then it changed. The laughter twisted into coughing, choking sounds. Kara pressed her hands over her ears. "Make it stop." Ben shouted through the window, "Who's out there?" "You want to scare us? Fine." The laughter stopped instantly, then something thudded against the wall, hard. We all jumped back. Another hit, closer to the window this time. Jason whispered, "It's on the porch." The boards creaked. Slow, dragging footsteps moved back and forth, like someone pacing. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the door's small window. For half a second, I saw a face pressed against the glass, and a child's face, skin gray and eyes black as the lake. Then the door rattled violently, hinges screaming. Ben and Jason held it shut while I shoved the dresser back against it. Kara was sobbing. It stopped as suddenly as it started. Silence again. Ben looked at me. "What do we do?" I wanted to say leave, but something in me knew it wouldn't matter. The car keys were on the counter, right next to the back window. Except now there was something written on the glass. Water droplets, forming words. Running down like condensation. Stay and swim. We didn't move until dawn. When the light finally crept through the trees, it was like waking from a nightmare that didn't end. The woods looked normal again. Birds were chirping. The air felt lighter, but when we stepped outside, the front steps were soaked. Small footprints trailed away toward the lake. Kara refused to go near it. She wanted to leave immediately. Ben agreed. We packed fast, throwing things into the car. I took one last look at the cabin before we left. The door to the bunk room was open. On one of the beds, written in mud across the sheets, were the words. We didn't speak much on the drive out of Hollow Pines. The road twisted through miles of forest, sunlight flickering through the trees like flashes of old film. Too bright, too fast. Kara sat in the front, hugging her knees, eyes locked on the road. Jason stared out the window, jaw tight. Ben drove, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I watched the rearview mirror even though I didn't want to. The woods didn't look right in daylight. The colors felt off and were too pale, too washed out. And for a while I could have sworn I saw movement between the trees keeping pace with us. When we finally hit the highway, Ben let out a shaky laugh. "See, we're out." It's over. But it didn't feel over. The smell still clung to us, that faint damp rot of lake water. It was in the upholstery and my clothes under my skin. No matter how many times I rolled the window down, I couldn't get rid of it. We stopped at a diner 2 towns over, the kind of place with peeling linoleum and coffee that tastes like cigarettes. No one said much. Kara just pushed her food around. Jason kept glancing at the door. Ben finally broke the silence. "So, we don't talk about this." "Agreed, agreed," Kara snapped. "That's all you have to say?" "After what we saw?" "What we think we saw," he corrected, trying for calm, but his voice trembled. "We were tired, drunk, scared." "Shut up," Jason muttered. "You smelled it too." Ben didn't answer. He just stared down into his coffee like it could explain everything. I looked out the window. The diner faced a small gas station. There was a puddle near the pumps, leftover rainwater maybe. And in it, just for a second, I saw the reflection of a boy standing behind me, barefoot, dripping. When I turned, no one was there. We each went our separate ways after that. Kara texted me that night saying she couldn't sleep, that she kept hearing splashing sounds outside her window even though she lived miles from any lake. Jason said his apartment smelled like mold, though he'd scrubbed everything. Ben stopped replying altogether. As for me, I tried to convince myself it was over. But 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of running water. The sink in my bathroom was full. Not dripping, full. The faucet was on full blast, gurgling like someone had turned it hours ago. The water was dark, almost black in the dim light. When I leaned closer, I saw a small shape floating just beneath the surface, a tag, rusted, with one word scratched into the metal. Eli. I stumbled back so hard I hit the wall. When I looked again, it was gone. Just clear water swirling down the drain. That was the moment I realized something. We hadn't left Hollow Pines. It had followed us. The next day, I tried to call Ben. No answer. I called again that night, and still nothing. So I texted him. No reply. By morning, Jason texted, "Ben's missing. Cops found his car parked near the lake by town. Doors open. Key still inside." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask which lake. Kara and I met at his place that afternoon. She looked pale, eyes red from crying. "They said there were footprints," she whispered. "Small ones. Like a kid's." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. We both knew. The police were treating it like an accident. Said he might have gone for a swim, gotten drunk, slipped. But they didn't find a body. Not yet. Kara grabbed my arm. "We need to go back." I stared at her. "Back? Are you insane?" "He's not gone," she said. "None of this stops until we find out what happened to Eli." I wanted to argue, but she was right. The guilt that had lived in me since 2009 had only gotten heavier. Maybe it was time to face it. We left that night. Jason refused to come. He said he'd had enough, that he'd move states if he had to. He begged us not to go back, but I couldn't shake the image of that tag in my sink. The drive back to Hollow Pines felt longer this time. Every mile the sky grew darker, the trees thicker. By the time we turned onto the dirt road, fog had rolled in so dense it swallowed the headlights. When the camp sign appeared, still crooked, still faded, the spray-painted warning was barely visible under the grime. "Don't stay after dark." It was already almost sunset. The cabin stood in silence. It was as if nothing had changed, except for the smell. It was worse now, heavy and wet, like the whole camp had been submerged. We parked near the lodge. Kara's hands shook as she lit a flashlight. We just look around. "Find anything about Eli? Then we leave." I nodded, but the second we stepped onto the path, the air shifted, heavier, colder. We checked the main office first. The door hung open, hinges rusted. Inside, papers were scattered across the floor, most too water-damaged to read. But in one filing cabinet, I found a drawer labeled Incident Reports, 2009. There were a few folders inside, swollen with damp. One was marked Elijah Cooper. I opened it carefully. The report inside was brief. Child went missing during storm, presumed drowned. Search called off after 48 hours. No remains recovered. Camp closed for the season. But beneath the report there was a handwritten note. Different ink, different handwriting. "Check cabin 3. He didn't drown." I felt my throat tighten. "Kara," I whispered. "Come look at this." Before she could, something banged upstairs, a heavy thud like a door slamming. We both froze. The building creaked, settling, and there's something moving. Kara's voice was a whisper. "We're not alone." I lifted the flashlight toward the ceiling. Dust drifted down from the rafters. A faint, wet sound echoed, like footsteps across wood. Then, from the far end of the hall, a door creaked open on its own. We moved slowly toward it, every step louder than it should have been. The air was thick, suffocating. When we reached the door, I pushed it open. It was the old infirmary. The cots were still lined up against the wall, mattresses black with mold. On one, a small shape lay under a sheet. Kara gasped. "Oh my God," I edged closer. The smell hit first, and water-rot metal. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I pulled the sheet back. It was a doll. Stuffed fabric, torn open, filled with lake mud. Someone had carved a face onto it with what looked like a rock, but stitched across the chest in faded blue thread was a name. Eli. Before I could react, the floorboards behind us groaned. Footsteps, slow, wet. Kara turned, shining her light toward the doorway. Nothing. Then the light flickered. Once, twice. And he was there. Standing in the hall, skin pale and slick, eyes clouded gray. Water dripped from his fingers, pooling at his bare feet. "Eli," I whispered. He tilted his head. The same motion I remembered from that night years ago, standing in the rain outside the cabin. "You left me," he said, voice warped, gurgling. "You promised you'd find me." Kara backed away, trembling. "We didn't know, Eli. We tried." He took a step forward. The sound of dripping grew louder. "You didn't look in the lake," he whispered. The flashlight flickered again, plunging us into darkness. When it came back, he was gone. We ran, out of the building, across the clearing, back toward cabin 3. The air was freezing now, our breath visible in thick fog. Inside the cabin, everything was just as we'd left it, except the beds. All the sheets were soaked, and on mine, carved into the wood of the headboard, were the words, "Find me." Kara clutched her flashlight. "He wants us to find his body." The word sank into me like ice. The lake, we went back outside. The fog was thicker now, rolling across the ground in slow waves. The moon was a pale smear above the treetops. The dock waited ahead, stretching into the still water. The tag was still there, nailed to the edge. Eli 2009. Kara knelt beside it. "If he's still here, maybe we can—" "I don't know. Help him move on." I didn't answer. Something about the lake felt wrong. Too still, too flat, like glass stretched over something alive. Then the surface rippled. Just once. And a small hand broke through. Kara screamed as another hand followed, gripping the edge of the dock. A child's head surfaced. Hair slicked flat, eyes open, staring straight at me. "Eli." He opened his mouth and water poured out. Not a scream, not words, just endless choking water spilling onto the wood. I grabbed Kara and pulled her back. "Run!" But before we could move, something else surfaced behind him. More hands. Small. Pale. Countless children, dozens of them rising from the lake, their faces bloated, eyes empty. The lost ones. Kara backed away, sobbing. "What the hell?" The water surged up over the dock, dragging at our feet. The air was filled with whispers, faint and wet. "Stay and swim. Stay and swim." The dock cracked under the weight. I pulled Kara toward the shore, slipping on the slick boards. One of the hands grabbed my ankle, small but impossibly strong. I kicked free, splinters cutting my leg. We hit the dirt path and ran, the voices chasing us, laughter and choking, overlapping until it didn't sound human anymore. At the car, the keys were gone. I searched my pockets, trembling. They weren't there. Kara's voice was shaking. "They're not going to let us leave." Then, from the trees, I heard it. The jingle of metal. The keys, they dangled from a branch ahead, swinging gently. I moved toward them, every instinct screaming not to. The forest was silent except for the soft dripping of water from the leaves. When I reached up to grab the keys, a small hand closed over mine. Cold. Wet. Eli's face appeared inches from mine, eyes empty. "It's too late," he whispered. I yanked free and sprinted back to the car. The engine roared to life, thank God, and we tore down the road, gravel spraying behind us. In the rearview mirror, the camp vanished into the fog. We didn't stop until we reached town. We sat in the car for a long time, shaking, drenched in lake water, though neither of us had fallen in. Kara finally spoke. "He said we didn't look in the lake." I nodded numbly. By the time I realized the water in the car wasn't stopping, it was already soaking my shoes. Kara screamed, shoving open the door, stumbling out onto the pavement. The sound echoed through the empty road. No traffic, no lights, just us and the hiss of distant rain. I scrambled out after her. The water poured from the open trunk, spreading across the asphalt like blood from a wound. Inside, the rusted tag floated for a moment, then sank into the puddle. Gone. Kara backed away, clutching her arms. "We have to burn it," she said, her voice shaking. "The camp, everything, it's the only way." "Burn it?" I repeated. My throat felt dry. "Yes," she shouted. "He's attached to that place and to whatever happened there. If we destroy it, maybe he'll go with it." I wanted to believe her. But as I looked back toward the woods, the thick black line on the horizon where Camp Hollow pines slept, I felt it watching us. Like it wanted us to come back. We bought gasoline from a hardware store in town. The cashier didn't even look up, just slid the cans across the counter, eyes dull. When I glanced at him again, his reflection in the glass door looked wrong. Too tall, too thin, with eyes like dark holes. When I blinked, it was normal again. Kara noticed me staring. "You saw it too, didn't you?" I didn't answer. The drive back was silent. The fog swallowed everything. It felt like we were driving in circles, though the road was straight. Every now and then I'd see something in the trees. Flashes of white, movement just out of reach. When the camp finally appeared, it looked almost peaceful. The morning mist rolled over the cabins, the lake perfectly still, But the silence was wrong, too deep, too heavy. Kara's hands trembled as she twisted open the gas can. "You take the lodge. I'll do the cabins," I nodded, though my chest felt tight. I wanted to run, to drive until the forest was nothing but a memory. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Eli would follow. He always did. Inside the lodge, the air was thick with decay. The floorboards squelched beneath my boots, soft from years of rot. I poured the gasoline along the walls, the smell sharp enough to burn my throat. That's when I heard it. The sound of children laughing, faint, echoing from the second floor. The sound I'd heard that night before Eli vanished. My hands shook. "Kara?" I called out. No answer. I climbed the stairs, flashlight trembling. The laughter grew louder, high, playful, wrong. It wasn't joy. It was mimicry, like something pretending to be human. At the top of the stairs, I saw movement, a flash of a small figure darting into one of the rooms. "Eli?" I whispered. I followed. The room was the old recreation hall, warped ping-pong tables, posters peeling off the walls. In the center stood Eli, dripping, barefoot, his eyes pale and glassy. "You came back," he said, voice wet and hollow. I swallowed hard. "We want to help you, to end this." He tilted his head, smiling faintly. It wasn't a child's smile, it was older, sharper. "You can't help me. You forgot me," my stomach turned. "We searched for you, Eli. We didn't stop until—" "You didn't look in the lake," he said again, cutting me off. "You knew where I was." The floor shifted under me, a deep creak like something breathing. The smell of water filled the room. I looked down. The boards were wet. Dark water began to seep through the cracks, spreading fast. "Eli, listen to me," I said, backing toward the door. "We can put you to rest," but he wasn't listening. His voice grew deeper, layered with others, whispers overlapping until they sounded like a swarm. "They all forgot. You all left." The walls began to tremble. Windows shattered inward, spraying glass and water. I ran. Outside, Kara was already pouring the last can across cabin 3. "We have to light it," she screamed. I didn't argue. I grabbed a box of matches from my pocket, an old pack from the diner. My hands shook as I struck one. The flame sputtered, then caught. I threw it. The fire spread fast, too fast. Flames climbed the walls, devouring the wood with a roar. Smoke poured upward, thick and black. The heat hit us like a wave. For a moment, I thought it was working, that maybe this nightmare would finally burn away. Then the lake began to move. It started as ripples, then waves, violent, unnatural. The water churned like it was boiling, and a deep rumble rose from below. Kara grabbed my arm. "Nate." The surface broke. Hands, dozens of them, hundreds, pale and dripping, clawing their way up from the depths. Faces followed. Children, counselors, shapes half rotted, half formed. They dragged themselves onto the shore, eyes empty, mouths open. The firelight reflected in their eyes like dying stars. Kara screamed and stumbled back. "Oh my God!" Eli rose among them, taller now, his body stretched by the water. His voice was layered, 1,000 drowned echoes. "You can't burn what's already dead." The ground shook. The trees bent inward, groaning like they were being pulled toward the lake. The air was full of whispers, desperate, pleading, angry. I grabbed Kara's hand and ran toward the car. The fire had spread to the main lodge now, flames licking the treetops. But as we neared the road, something caught my leg, cold and strong. A hand. Eli's. He stared up at me from the dirt, eyes full of black water. "You promised," he said. I kicked free, but his grip tightened. The world around me blurred. The fire, the lake, the trees all melting into a haze of smoke and light. Then everything went black. I woke to sunlight. The smell of ash. I was lying near the road, the car parked a few feet away. Smoke still rose from the direction of the camp, but the fire was dying. Kara was gone. I staggered to my feet, calling her name until my voice broke. Nothing answered but the sound of the wind through burned trees. When I reached the lake, it was calm again, clear, almost beautiful. But near the center, I saw something floating, a body. Kara. Her hair spread around her like dark seaweed. Eyes open, mouth slack, I fell to my knees. The water lapped at the shore, gentle, like it was breathing, and then she blinked. I stumbled backward. "Kara?" Her lips moved. A whisper, barely audible. "Stay and swim." Something cold brushed my ankle. I looked down, a small hand rising from the shallows. I ran. They found me 2 days later. wandering the highway, covered in ash and mud. I told them about the fire, about Kara, about the lake. They sent divers. They didn't find a single body, not hers, not Ben's, not Eli's. The official report called it an accident. A fire caused by lightning, the camp completely destroyed. Case closed, but the nightmares didn't stop. Every night I hear the water, the splashing, the laughter, and sometimes when I wake, my sheets are damp. My hands smell like the lake. I moved 3 towns over, thinking distance would help. It didn't. The smell followed. The whispers followed. A week ago, a package showed up on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a small metal tag, Kara 2025. I threw it away, but the next morning it was on my nightstand. Dry this time. Clean. Last night I dreamed of hollow pines again, only this time it wasn't burned. The cabin stood whole, the lake calm and blue. The sun was out. Children were laughing. Eli stood on the dock waving at me. "Come on," he called. "It's safe now." I woke with my feet wet. It's midnight now. I can hear the water again. Somewhere close, though I live miles from any shore. There's a faint dripping from the hallway, steady as a heartbeat. I know what it means. He's found me. I'm writing this so someone will know what happened, in case I don't make it until morning. If you ever find Camp Hollow Pines, if they ever rebuild it, don't go near the lake. Don't listen when you hear the laughter. Don't follow the sound of splashing. And if you smell the water, that thick rotten sweetness, run, because he's still there, waiting, and he remembers every name. The ocean always sounded different at night. During the day it was alive, noisy, crowded, full of laughter and the shrill cries of gulls. But when the sun went down, the sound changed. The waves didn't crash anymore. They whispered, like the sea was talking to itself, remembering things it shouldn't. I hadn't been back to Brighton Pier in almost 20 years. But when my mother died, and I found the photo of me as a child, standing on that same boardwalk beside a boy I didn't recognize, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The boy had no name written on the back, just a date, August 12th, 1999. I was 7 years old that summer, the last summer we came to the coast, the last time my father smiled before he disappeared. The town hadn't changed much. The same cheap motels with flickering neon signs, the same smell of salt and fried food clinging to the air. The boardwalk itself was still there, though most of the stalls were shut down. "Renovations coming soon," one sign promised in peeling red paint. It was a lie. The place looked abandoned. I parked near the beach entrance and killed the engine. The sea breeze carried that same sharp tang of salt and rot. The horizon glowed faintly, where the last bit of sunset clung to the water. I took the photo from my pocket. There I was, small and squinting, a melting ice cream cone in one hand. And next to me, the boy, pale, thin, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked maybe 8 or 9, but his eyes, they were too dark, too serious, like he knew something I didn't. Mom never told me who he was. In fact, when I'd asked her once years ago, she said flatly, "You didn't have any friends that summer." Then she'd changed the subject. The wooden boards creaked under my shoes as I stepped onto the pier. The carnival lights were dead now, just rusted bulbs lining the railings. A lone sign above the entrance still read, "Brighton Boardwalk open daily," though the letters had faded to ghosts of color. I walked toward the old arcade, the photo tight in my hand. Every sound seemed too loud. The groan of the boards, the slap of waves against the pillars below. A few gulls circled overhead, but even they sounded distant, like echoes. Halfway down the boardwalk, I stopped. There was a small coin-operated ride, the kind shaped like a dolphin, the kind kids sit on while music plays. The paint was chipped, the seat cracked, but it looked familiar. I didn't remember much from that summer, but I remembered that ride. I'd begged my dad for $1 to use it. He'd laughed and said he didn't have one, that we'd come back tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. I knelt down, brushing away a layer of sand. Someone had scratched words into the base of the ride, letters faint but still visible. "Don't go in the water." My chest tightened. I stood up fast, glancing toward the beach. The waves rolled calmly, the moonlight glittering across their surface. That's when I saw him, a boy standing near the shoreline, still, watching me. He wore an oversized hoodie, hood down, hair dark and wet like he'd just come out of the water. His skin was pale under the moonlight. For a moment, I thought he was just some local kid. Then he lifted his hand, not to wave, but to point. At me, a chill crawled up my spine. I blinked and he was gone. Back in my motel room, I couldn't sleep. The waves outside were too loud, hammering the shore like fists. I poured a glass of water and stared at the photo again under the lamp. The boy's face looked different now. His expression, I swear it had changed. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. I dropped the photo and backed away. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. It must have been my imagination, the light, my exhaustion. Still, I couldn't bring myself to touch the photo again. I left the lamp on that night. The next morning, I drove into town to find the local library. A tired-looking woman behind the desk asked if I needed help. "I'm looking for old newspaper archives," I said. "Anything about missing children around here?" Late 90s, maybe 1999. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. "That's pretty specific," she said, typing on her computer. "You can use the microfilm reader in the back." I thanked her and headed to the dusty archive room. The smell of old paper hit me, dry, heavy, familiar. I loaded a reel marked Brighton Gazette, 1999. It didn't take long. Third headline down, August 14th. Local boy, 9, missing after night swim. Authorities search Brighton shoreline. Witnesses last saw the boy near the north end of the pier around midnight. His name has not been released pending family notification. My throat went dry. I checked the photo again. The date written on the back, August 12th, 1999, 2 days before the boy disappeared. I scrolled down the page, searching for a name. The follow-up article listed one. Dathan Collins. The name meant nothing to me, but something else caught my eye. A quote from a lifeguard who'd seen him that night. He said he was waiting for someone. A friend from the boardwalk. That night I drove back to the pier. The fog was heavier this time, swallowing the lights from town. The sea looked endless and a flat black mirror. The ride was still there, the dolphin motionless. I knelt again, tracing the carved letters with my fingers. "Don't go in the water." The wood felt damp. Behind me I heard footsteps. Slow, barefoot. I turned. The boy from the photo stood at the end of the boardwalk, dripping, silent, the same eyes, the same pale skin, and now I remembered. That summer night I did have a friend. A boy who asked if I wanted to see something cool, a secret under the pier. I followed him then, and when we reached the edge of the water, he pushed me in. I stood there frozen, breath fogging in the cold night air, staring at him. The boy didn't move, didn't blink. His clothes hung heavy, dripping onto the boards, puddles forming around his bare feet. "Who are you?" I finally managed to say. He tilted his head slightly like he was trying to remember. Then his lips moved. "You said you'd come back." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" But before I could take another step, he turned and walked toward the end of the pier, toward the edge where the wood turned slick and black. His footsteps left dark, wet prints that didn't fade. I should have left right then. Instead, I followed. The closer I got, the colder it became. The fog thickened, swallowing the lights from the parking lot until it felt like the whole world was just me, the boy, and the sound of water. He stopped at the edge and pointed down into the darkness below. The sea churned softly, rippling under the moonlight. "Do you remember?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Images flashed behind my eyes. The boardwalk. My father's hand holding mine, the smell of salt and sunscreen, a boy's voice whispering, "Let's go under the pier." Then a splash. And darkness. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "No, you're not real. You can't be." The boy's eyes lifted to mine. They were black now, like the ocean itself. "You left me," he said softly. "You promised you'd stay." The boards beneath my feet creaked, groaning as if under too much weight. The smell of rot rose up, thick and sour. When I looked down, water was seeping between the cracks again. Not ocean water, darker, thicker, and in it something moved. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked and my heart hammering so hard it hurt. I sat there for minutes, maybe hours, staring at the fog-shrouded boardwalk. The boy never followed. But the water did. When I turned on the headlights, I saw it, streaks of wet footprints leading right up to the car door. And on the driver's side window, a handprint, small, pressed from the inside. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove to the police station. A tired officer behind the desk looked up when I mentioned the name Nathan Collins. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. That's an old one. Kid went missing out by the pier back in '99. Search teams never found a body. Currents around here are nasty. If he went under, he's long gone. Did they find anything else? I asked. Like signs of another kid? He frowned. Another kid? I hesitated. A friend. Someone who might have been with him that night. He shook his head. Witnesses said he was alone. His mom told us he didn't have friends around here. Why? I forced a laugh. Just curious. I used to come here as a kid. Thought maybe I remembered something. The officer smiled thinly. Old memories have a way of making stories up for you. Yeah, maybe they did. That evening I sat on the beach as the sun went down. The boardwalk loomed behind me, silent except for the distant creak of wood in the wind. I thought about leaving. About getting in my car and driving until I couldn't smell the ocean anymore. But then I noticed something sticking out of the sand by the waterline. Something small and metallic. I walked closer. It was a coin. Old, corroded, edges eaten by rust. I wiped it off with my sleeve. A dolphin was engraved on one side. The same dolphin as the ride on the pier, and carved into the other side, faint but clear. For Nate, one last ride. I dropped it instantly. The moment it hit the sand, the tide surged forward and swallowed it. The water pulled back slow, deliberate, like it was breathing. And there, where the coin had been, I saw footprints, small, barefoot, leading toward the pier. That night I dreamed of the boardwalk. The lights were on again, bright, colorful, alive. Music played from the carousel, laughter filled the air. The smell of popcorn and salt water mingled sweetly. I was 7 again. My dad stood beside me, smiling as I held the hand of a boy I barely knew. Nathan, let's go under, he whispered.
There's something cool I want to show you. I hesitated, but he smiled, a real smile this time, warm and human.
It's okay. You'll like it. We crawled beneath the pier, the sound of the waves echoing like thunder. The air grew cold and damp. Then everything shifted. The laughter stopped. The light vanished. And Nathan's hand changed. It tightened around mine. Cold, slick, like the skin of something that had been underwater too long. When I turned to look, his face wasn't his anymore. His skin was pale and torn, his mouth dark and full of sand. You promised you'd stay, he whispered again. But you left me in the dark. I woke up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, or maybe not sweat. My hands smelled like seawater, and on the nightstand where I'd left the photo, the paper was wet. The image blurred, but the boy's face, Nathan's, looked clearer than ever. He was smiling now. I don't know why I went back again. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the way the ocean kept whispering my name whenever I tried to sleep. But as I stepped onto the pier that final night, I knew I wasn't alone. The lights were flickering, weak, yellow glows running along the railing. The dolphin ride creaked softly, moving on its own. A single coin sat in its slot. Old, rusted, waiting. I didn't remember putting it there. But when I reached for it, a voice behind me said, "Ready for another ride?" The voice came from behind me, close enough that I could feel the cold breath on my neck. I turned slowly. Nathan stood there in the flickering light, looking exactly as he had the night before. Dripping, gray, eyes too dark to be human. But now he was smiling. "You remember now, don't you?" he said softly. I didn't answer. My throat had gone dry. The waves beneath the pier were louder tonight, crashing harder against the wooden pillars as if the ocean itself was restless. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. He stepped closer. The boards groaned under his bare feet. "You promised," he said. "You said you wouldn't leave me. But you did." Images flared in my head again, too fast to stop them. That summer night. The two of us slipping away from the fair, laughing, pockets full of stolen tickets. Crawling under the pier, daring each other to go farther, where the light couldn't reach. Then the tide coming in faster than we expected. The sound of him yelling my name, and then silence. I had run. I had told the adults I didn't know where he went. That we'd gotten separated. That I'd gone looking. No one ever questioned it. Kids vanish by the ocean every year, but I knew. I'd known all along. Nathan watched my face, and for the first time I saw something in his expression that wasn't anger. It was sadness, a deep, hollow kind of sadness that made my chest ache. I was scared, I said finally, the words barely leaving my mouth. I thought you were right behind me. I tried to come back, but he shook his head slowly. No, you left. You left me in the dark. You let the water take me. The lights along the pier flickered harder. The air grew colder. I could see my breath now, each exhale hanging heavy in the fog. Nathan stepped closer. His face was inches from mine. His voice was soft, like the tide retreating. Come with me, Nate, it's not too late. He reached out his hand. His skin was pale, slick with seawater, fingers trembling slightly. For a moment I thought about taking it, just to see what would happen, just to make it stop. But then somewhere in the distance I heard a sound, faint but real. Waves, wind, the world, and it reminded me I was still alive. I can't, I whispered. Nathan's eyes darkened and the sadness vanished, replaced by something deeper. Fury, grief, hunger. Then you'll never leave, he said. The pier shuddered beneath us. The sound of wood splintering cracked through the air. Water surged up between the boards, spilling around my shoes. I turned and ran. The lights went out. The entire boardwalk plunged into darkness. Behind me I heard him screaming. Not words, just that horrible bubbling sound of air trapped in a drowning throat. The water was chasing me now, pouring across the boards like a living thing. I sprinted toward the parking lot, slipping once, scraping my knee, tasting salt in the back of my throat. I didn't stop until I was in the sand. The pier behind me half submerged in black water. Then, just like that, it was still again. The sea was calm. The fog lifted. The boardwalk looked old and harmless in the early dawn light. But when I looked down, my hands were shaking and they were wet. I drove until morning. Didn't even know where I was going, just away from the ocean. The sun was rising when I finally stopped at a diner off the highway. My reflection in the window looked hollow, pale, older somehow. When the waitress brought my coffee, I noticed a boy sitting in the booth across from me. Maybe 12. Messy blonde hair, freckles, hoodie too big for him. He was staring at me. When our eyes met, he smiled. A small, sad smile. Then he whispered something I couldn't hear, and vanished. The waitress came back with the check. You okay, hon? You look like you've seen a ghost. I laughed, but it came out thin and broken. Yeah, I said. Maybe I have. I told myself I was done, that I'd forget it. Move inland. Never go near the water again. But guilt doesn't drown easy. A week later, a letter arrived at my apartment. No return address. The paper was damp, edges warped. Inside was a single item. An old rusted coin, the same dolphin engraving. The same words carved on the back. For Nate, one last ride. Beneath it, written in smeared ink, was a message. The tide's coming back. That night, I dreamed of the ocean again. But it wasn't the same dream. The pier was gone, washed away. The water was calm, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Nathan stood on the surface, barefoot, smiling at me. You can't keep running, he said. What do you want me to do? He pointed downward, toward the dark beneath him. Find me. I woke up with seawater pooled on my floor. That's when I knew I had to go back. Not to the pier, but beneath it. The tide was low when I returned. The air smelled of salt and rust. The sky bruised purple with oncoming storm clouds. I parked near the ruins of the boardwalk and walked down to where the pillars met the sand. Every step closer made my chest tighten. The surf whispered against the shore, gentle like a heartbeat. I crawled under the collapsed boards, flashlight trembling in my hand. The beams caught the edges of barnacles, broken bottles, old rope, and then something half buried in the sand. It was a small backpack, faded blue, zipper rusted shut. I pulled it free. Inside was a child's t-shirt, waterlogged and brittle. A dolphin patch on the front pocket. My breath caught. I dug deeper, my fingers brushing something hard. A small rusted metal tag, the kind they used for the ride's tickets. Nathan Collins. Ride 57, my vision blurred. My heartbeat roared in my ears. The flashlight flickered, once, twice, then died. And in that perfect, suffocating dark, I heard him again. Thank you. he whispered. You found me. Something cold touched my hand, and then the tide came in. The ocean was rising fast. Wind howled through the broken ribs of the boardwalk, each gust bending wood and shadow until everything around me groaned like a living thing. The flashlight was dead, the world reduced to darkness and the crash of waves. I could still feel his touch, cold fingers brushing mine before disappearing with the tide. Find me, Nathan had said, but now that I had, I wasn't sure what that meant. I tried to crawl backward out from under the pier, but the sand was already flooding with water. Each wave surged farther, tugging at my legs, my arms. The ocean wanted me closer. Lightning flashed. For a second I saw everything, the broken pillars, the tangle of rope and wood, and him. Nathan was standing knee-deep in the surf facing me. Not a shadow this time, not a trick of the light. He was there, real enough that the water moved around him. His hair floated around his pale face, and his eyes glimmered with something that wasn't anger anymore. Why did you come back? He asked. I was shaking from the cold, from the fear, from everything. Because I had to, I said. Because I couldn't stop seeing you. His expression softened for the briefest second. You remember what happened? I do. The words burned coming out. I ran, I left you there. I thought you'd gotten out. You promised. I know. The ocean hissed between us, the water climbing higher now, up to my chest, soaking my jacket. My feet slipped in the sand. Somewhere behind me, part of the pier cracked and fell into the water with a roar. I'm sorry, I said. I was scared. I was just a kid. Nathan tilted his head. I was a kid too, lightning again, this time closer. The world went white. When my vision cleared, he was standing right in front of me. The smell of salt and decay filled my lungs. His voice came softer now, fragile as the wind. You left me alone in the dark for a long time, Nate. I know. My voice broke. What do you want me to do? He looked down at the water. Stay. For a moment, everything stopped, and the wind, the waves, even the sound. Just his face, inches from mine. The ocean whispering between us. Then I shook my head. I can't, he blinked, confused. You said you wouldn't leave again. I can't stay, I said. But I can help you. Nathan frowned. Help me? I reached into the pocket of my soaked jacket and pulled out the small metal tag I'd found. The one with his name. The tide had cleaned it, the letters glinting faintly in the lightning. This belongs to you, I said. You don't have to be here anymore, he stared at it. For a second, he looked like a boy again, the way he was in that old photograph. Then he reached out slowly, fingers trembling, and took the tag. The moment he touched it, the wind died. The sea went completely still. And then from somewhere deep below, a light began to glow. Soft, blue, rippling like moonlight under the surface. Nathan looked at me, eyes wide. It's so quiet, he whispered. I forgot what quiet felt like. He started to fade, his skin turning translucent, the outline of his body shimmering like mist. Wait, I said, my voice catching. Nathan, he smiled, a small, sad smile that somehow felt like forgiveness. You found me, he said. Now you can go. And then he was gone. The light beneath the water dimmed and the sea exhaled, drawing back slowly, leaving me kneeling in the wet sand. I don't remember how long I stayed there. The storm passed, dawn came. When I finally stood, the beach was empty. No footprints, no backpack, just the quiet crash of waves and the broken pier, standing like a skeleton against the morning sky. They found me later that day, a fisherman and his son, walking the shoreline. They said I was muttering something about a boy and a promise. They took me to the hospital for hypothermia. When the police checked the pier, they found nothing, no sign of anyone. Just a single object washed up near the rocks, a rusted ride token with a dolphin engraved on one side. The other side was blank. No name, no words, weeks passed. I moved inland, just like I said I would. No ocean, no gulls. Still, sometimes I wake in the middle of the night to the sound of waves, faint and rhythmic like they're just outside my window. I tell myself it's only the wind. But once, just once, when I went to make coffee at dawn, I saw something on the kitchen counter, a small puddle of water, and in the center of it a single grainy seashell. It was shaped like a dolphin. That afternoon I drove to a lake nearby, far from any tide, any salt. The water was still and dark. I took the shell and tossed it in, whispering a quiet goodbye. For a long time, I watched the ripples spread until the surface went calm again. When I turned to leave, a child's laughter echoed faintly across the water. I didn't turn back. 3 months later, the local paper ran a small story. Remains found beneath old boardwalk identified after 25 years. Authorities confirm skeletal remains of a child discovered in a collapsed section of pier during reconstruction. Identification matched to missing boy Nathan Collins. Last seen 1999. Officials say evidence suggests accidental drowning. They didn't mention the other part, that the workers reported hearing children laughing under the pier before the discovery. Or that one of them swore he saw a figure standing on the shore, watching quietly before vanishing into the fog. The ocean is quiet now, and sometimes when the wind shifts just right, I swear I can hear it in the faint creak of a ride, the sound of waves rolling under wooden beams, and a boy's voice whispering, almost tender, "Thanks for coming back." The town of Fairvale was already dying before the last night in August. People just didn't know it yet. I came back for the first time in 15 years, driving through empty streets that felt smaller than I remembered, past rusted gas stations, boarded-up diners, and a movie theater whose letters had all fallen off except for stay. It was supposed to be a quick visit, just long enough to sell my parents' house and leave before the memories caught up. But memories have a way of waiting for you, especially in Fairvale. The air that night carried the smell of rain and something faintly metallic. Crickets sang and the sky bled orange as the sun sank behind the tree line. It was the same kind of sunset I remembered from that night, the last night of summer, 2008, when everything went wrong. Back then, there were 5 of us. Me, Derek, Lily, Mark, and Hannah. We were 17, loud, restless, and invincible. That night we'd promised it would be our last adventure before college, before jobs, before real life began. We took Derek's old pickup out to Miller's Field just outside of town, with a cooler full of cheap beer and a sky full of stars. It was supposed to be a celebration, but every time I closed my eyes after that, I saw the glow, a pale light rising through the fog near the edge of the woods, and Lily walking toward it barefoot, her face empty and her eyes wide. And the next morning, she was gone. No one ever found her body. No one ever explained what that light was. 15 years later, I parked the rental car in front of my old house, the one with the crooked porch and the wind chimes that still hung from the eave. The grass was overgrown. The mailbox was filled with damp flyers. Inside, it smelled like dust and old wood. I hadn't been back since my parents left town. They'd moved away 2 years after Lily disappeared, saying the place never felt right anymore. I didn't blame them. The real estate agent had said I'd need to meet the county clerk the next morning to finalize the sale, so I had one night to stay here. One night in Fairvale. One night in that house. I tried to convince myself it didn't mean anything, that dates didn't matter, that ghosts didn't wait for anniversaries. But when I checked my phone, the date glared back at me. August 31st. The last night in August. I should have gone to a motel. I know that now. But instead I unpacked, made some coffee, and sat by the kitchen window. The crickets were louder now, almost frantic. Out in the distance, thunder rolled. That's when I saw it. A flicker. At first I thought it was lightning, but then it pulsed again. A soft, steady glow coming from the direction of Miller's Field. The same color I remembered. That same pale light. I froze, the mug trembling in my hands. 15 years of denial unraveled all at once. Before I knew it, I was standing, keys in hand. The rational part of me whispered, "Don't do this." But something deeper, something older, was already driving me back. The road to Miller's Field hadn't changed much. Weeds grew through the cracks in the asphalt. The wooden sign was half rotted, hanging by one nail. And the trees loomed closer now, branches tangled like fingers. When I reached the edge of the field, I parked and killed the headlights. For a long time, I just sat there, staring out into the darkness. The glow was still there. Faint but real, shimmering near the old water tower at the far end of the field. That's where she'd been standing that night. I stepped out, the grass brushing my jeans, the air thick with humidity and the smell of rain. Each step felt heavier than the last. I told myself it was just kids messing around. Maybe a lantern, maybe a phone light. But as I got closer, the world around me went strangely quiet. No crickets, no wind, not even the distant hum of cars. Just silence, and then I heard it in a faint hum, low, rhythmic, almost musical, the kind of sound you feel more than hear. It came from the direction of the light. I stopped walking. My breath fogged in front of me, and though the air wasn't cold, then, in that pale glow, I saw movement. Someone was standing there, a girl barefoot, wearing a white dress. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. "Lily?" I whispered. The figure didn't move, didn't even turn. Lightning flashed behind the clouds, and in that moment of brightness, I saw her face. Pale, eyes blank, lips parted slightly as if whispering something I couldn't hear. And then the light went out. The field went black. I ran. By the time I reached the truck, my heart was a drum in my chest. The storm finally broke, rain pouring hard enough to blur the windshield. I slammed the door, fumbled for the ignition, and turned the key. The engine sputtered once, then died. "Come on," I muttered, trying again. Nothing. Outside, the rain streaked across the glass in silver lines. And then, through the curtain of water, I saw something move past the passenger side window. Just a shadow, quick and silent. Then another. Something was circling the truck. I locked the doors. My hands were shaking. The flashlight on the dash flickered once before dying completely. I reached for my phone, but the screen was blank. No signal. A faint tap came from the rear window. Then another. I turned slowly, every nerve in my body screaming. A handprint was pressed against the glass. Small, delicate. A child's, maybe. The rain washed over it, but it didn't fade. And then, just above the sound of the storm, I heard a voice. Soft. Familiar. "Why did you come back?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The voice came again, closer this time. Right beside my ear. "You shouldn't be here." "Nate." I jerked my head to the left. And for the briefest second, in the reflection of the window, I saw her face, Lily. Her eyes were black. Not like pupils, just black. All of it, and then she was gone. When the storm finally passed, the world felt hollow. The engine started on the first try, as if nothing had happened. I drove back to town in silence, headlights cutting through the fog. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't turn on the radio. But when I pulled into the driveway of the old house, something caught my eye. The porch light was on. I hadn't turned it on, and there, hanging from the porch rail, was something small, swaying gently in the breeze. I stepped closer, heart pounding. It was a charm bracelet, the one Lily used to wear, and it was dripping wet. Morning came gray and thin, the kind of light that made everything look washed out and brittle. For a moment I thought I'd dreamed the night before, until I saw the bracelet on the kitchen table. It was still wet. The little silver charms, an anchor, a heart, a tiny star, were caked with mud. I remembered how Lily used to spin them between her fingers when she was nervous. The same anchor she'd dropped the night she vanished. I touched it. The metal was cold, but not like something left out overnight. It felt recent, alive. I dropped it quickly and stared out the window. The yard was empty, the grass pressed down in a narrow line leading toward the tree line. The county clerk's office was only a 10-minute drive, but I barely heard a word the clerk said. She talked about signatures, taxes, as-is condition. All I could think about was the bracelet and how someone had to put it there. When she finished, she gave me a tired smile. "Hard selling the old places," she said. "Fairvale's been losing people for years." "You're doing the right thing getting out," I forced a nod. "Yeah, one night left and I'm gone." Her pen froze midair. "You said you're staying there tonight?" "Just till morning," she hesitated. "You might want to keep a light on. Power lines out near Miller's Field go strange when storms roll through. Locals say the static messes with things." "Static?" She shrugged, eyes flicking away. "Old stories. Electricity, ghosts, whatever people need to blame." Back at the house, I couldn't sit still. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. The air smelled faintly of rain and burnt dust from the furnace. Around noon, I opened the attic. Dust poured down like smoke. Boxes, old furniture, the smell of mildew. And one thing that didn't belong. A stack of Polaroids scattered near the window. They were from that summer. Us at the lake. Lily laughing, water in her hair. Derek and Mark wrestling near the truck. And then the last photo. Blurred, dark. The field behind us and a faint streak of light cutting the frame in two. On the back, someone had written in messy blue ink, "It's not over." I dropped the photo. Something behind me creaked. The attic stairs shifted, slow and deliberate, like someone was coming up. "Hello?" I called out. Silence, then a whisper, faint but clear. "Don't look." The air went cold. My breath came out in mist. I didn't look. I couldn't. I ran, nearly falling down the steps, slammed the attic door, and leaned against it until my heartbeat slowed. When I finally looked again, a thin line of light glowed under the door. A steady, soft pulse. Then it went out. That evening, I drove to the edge of town. The gas station was still open, the same one Derek used to work at. The bell over the door jingled as I walked in. Behind the counter stood an old man with thick glasses. He looked up, eyes narrowing. "You're one of the Miller kids, ain't you? The group from '08? "Yeah," I said slowly. "Nate, you knew my folks?" He nodded. "Knew your friend too." "The girl," my stomach turned. "Lily." He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Funny thing, the night she went missing, power went out across half the county. Phones died, clocks stopped. Only time it ever happened like that. Static?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "That's what they called it. But static don't leave footprints in wet grass." He leaned closer. "You ever wonder why nobody saw the light after that night?" I didn't answer. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small object wrapped in a paper towel. "Kid brought this in last year. Found it near the tower after the floods. Figured you should have it." Inside was a Polaroid, cracked edges blackened by water. Lily again. But this time she wasn't smiling. Her eyes were looking past the camera, toward something behind whoever took the picture, and behind her, just at the edge of the frame. A pale shape shimmered, tall, human-shaped, but wrong, bent, like it was made of light stretched too thin. "Could be a trick of exposure," I said, though my voice shook. "Could be," he said, "or maybe it's what the static leaves behind." I drove home before dark. The sky over Fairvale was low and heavy, thunder murmuring in the distance. I left the kitchen lights on, but the shadows in the corners seemed to move when I wasn't looking. At 11:43 p.m., the power flickered. The hum of the refrigerator stuttered, then died. The house fell into silence. Then, crackle. A faint hiss like radio static filled the air. It came from nowhere and everywhere, vibrating in the walls. I turned slowly toward the living room. The TV was on. White snow filled the screen, static dancing like a swarm of insects. The remote lay untouched on the table, and within the static, shapes began to form. For a second I thought I saw a hand, then a face. Lily's face, mouth open, whispering soundlessly through the static storm. Then through the hiss came a voice, soft, familiar. "You left me there." The screen flickered, and the living room filled with light. When my eyes adjusted, I wasn't in the living room anymore. I was standing in Miller's field. The grass rippled under my feet, though there was no wind. The same pale glow rose from the ground, pulsing like a heartbeat. And ahead of me stood 5 figures: Derek, Mark, Hannah, Lily, and me. The 5 of us, exactly as we were that night. Laughing, drinking, the radio playing faintly. I watched myself toss a beer can and point toward the woods, mouthing words I already knew by heart. "Let's check it out." Lily followed. And I watched it happen all over again. The light grew brighter. The hum turned sharp. The others froze as Lily stepped closer, her hair lifting in the glow. She turned toward me, toward the version of me that wasn't really there, and said, "It's beautiful." Then she screamed. Everything went white. I woke on the living room floor, drenched in sweat. The TV was dark again. The digital clock on the wall blinked 12:01 a.m. The last night in August had just begun, and from somewhere outside, the direction of the field, I heard it. That low, rhythmic hum calling again. By morning, the sky over Fairvale was a heavy bruise. Rain came in waves, slanting against the windows, turning the yard into a mirror of shallow puddles. I didn't sleep, not really. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights on, the bracelet still in front of me. Every so often I thought I heard the faint hiss of static from the walls, like it was breathing. I couldn't stay there alone anymore. There were 3 people left who knew what happened that night: Derek, Hannah, and Mark. I started with Derek. He still lived on the south edge of town, running his father's auto shop. The place looked the same. Metal siding, junked cars, smell of grease and wet asphalt. But when I walked in, he looked like he'd aged a lifetime. Nate? His voice was careful, like he wasn't sure I was real. Man, it's been years. 15, I said. You got a minute? He hesitated. You heard about the floods? This isn't about that. It's about her, that did it. His face hardened. No, we're not doing this again. I set the Polaroid from the gas station counter on his desk. Lily, her eyes wide, that pale figure behind her. He stared at it for a long time before exhaling through his nose. Where'd you get that? Guy at the station. Said it washed up after the flood. You ever see anything like that before? He rubbed a hand over his jaw. We promised we wouldn't talk about it. Why? Because talking about it makes it come back. I leaned closer. Come back? Derek looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. You think she's dead? I did too. But she's not gone, Nate, not all the way. The static, he stopped, swallowed. You've heard it, haven't you? I didn't answer. Every year around now, he said quietly. Last week of August. Lights flicker. Radios cut out. I hear her voice sometimes, like she's trying to finish what she was saying. What was she saying? He shook his head. You were with her when it happened. Hannah lived 2 towns over in a beige apartment complex that smelled like rain and cigarettes. She opened the door with tired eyes and no makeup, like she hadn't slept in days. You shouldn't have come here, she said. I just need to know what happened that night. Her jaw clenched. You already do. Then why do we all remember it differently? That stopped her. She looked past me into the parking lot, then back. Because the light changes things. It shows you what you want, not what's real. What did you see? For a long moment, she said nothing. Then I saw her walk into it, smiling, like she was being called home. But when the light went out, Hannah's voice cracked. There wasn't anything left. I told her about the bracelet, the footprints, the photo, about waking up in the field again. Her hands trembled. It's happening again, isn't it? I think so. Then you have to burn it, she said suddenly. The house, the field, whatever's left. That won't stop it. It did before. She met my eyes, voice trembling. That's why we made the pact. I frowned. What pact? She looked away. Ask Mark. By the time I reached Mark's place, the rain had turned to mist. He lived near the old water tower, close to the woods. The place reeked of mold and gasoline. Mark didn't answer when I knocked, so I pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of static, faint but unmistakable. The living room looked like it hadn't been lived in for months. Curtains drawn, floor littered with beer cans, papers, maps of the field pinned to the walls. And on every page, scrawled in black ink, 31st. I found him in the basement. He was sitting on the floor, facing a wall covered in photographs. Old campfires, the tower, the lake, Lily smiling. Between them, newspaper clippings, local girl missing, search ends without result. When he noticed me, he didn't even flinch. I wondered when you'd come, he said softly. What the hell is all this? He didn't answer right away. We thought it would fade after we burned the clearing. But it never does. It's drawn to the ones who saw it. The light? He nodded. It wasn't light, Nate. Not really. It was sound, turned visible. Like static made flesh. Lily was the first to hear it. He turned to me. Do you remember what she said before she screamed? I thought hard. I'd tried not to remember for 15 years, but the words were there, buried like glass under sand. She said, "It's calling." Mark smiled sadly. She wasn't wrong. He stood, walked to the desk, and pulled open a drawer. Inside was an old cassette tape, the label half peeled away. In shaky handwriting, one word, August. He handed it to me. We recorded it that night. The noise started when the storm hit. This is what we caught before everything went white. I hesitated, then took it. Why give it to me? Because it wants you, he said. You were the last one with her. Something in his eyes made my stomach turn. You think it killed her? He shook his head slowly. No, I think it's still using her voice. Back at the house, the power was out again. The air buzzed faintly like invisible wires humming just under the skin of the world. I found my old tape player in the attic, brushed off the dust and slid the cassette in. A click. Then a hiss, at first nothing but static, faint, rhythmic. Then the hum. Low, growing deeper, pulsing like a heartbeat, and beneath it, voices, faint, distorted, laughing, then screaming, then Lily's voice. "Don't look," the player whined. The sound warped higher, sharper until it wasn't sound anymore but pressure pressing against my ribs, my skull. I tried to stop it, but the buttons jammed. The air grew hot. The lights flickered back on. Every bulb in the house pulsed with that same slow rhythm I'd seen in the field. And then, from the doorway, I heard her. "Nate." I turned. Lily stood at the end of the hall, water dripping from her hair, eyes pale gray. Her skin shimmered faintly, edges flickering like static. "You left me," she whispered. I stumbled back. "Lily, what is this? What do you want?" She tilted her head. "You stayed." The walls vibrated. The hum rose. The house began to shake. The Polaroids on the wall fluttered loose, spinning in the air. The tape player sparked, smoke curling from it. Then for a heartbeat, I wasn't in the house anymore. I was back in the field. The glow all around. The others screaming. Lily reaching for me. And that voice, not hers but through her, a chorus of static. "One must stay." Then it was gone. The light snapped off. The tape clicked to a stop. The hum faded. When I finally looked around, the hall was empty again. The floor wet with footprints that led toward the front door and vanished at the threshold. I sat there for hours, waiting for dawn. But the clock never moved past 11:59 p.m. No wind, no rain. Just that faint waiting silence. The last night in August wasn't over. It never had been. The clock still read 11:59 when I stepped outside. The air was too still, too quiet, like the world had stopped breathing. The moon hung swollen and pale, reflected in every puddle along the dirt road that led back to Miller's Field. I didn't remember deciding to go there. My body just moved like it already knew the way. The bracelet was in my pocket, the tape in my hand. Every step hummed with that faint static, growing louder the closer I got. By the time I reached the edge of the clearing, the hum was a living thing. The grass bent outward, like something had pushed through from below. The air shimmered faintly, not from heat but from something unseen, flickering in and out of the world. It was all exactly as it had been 15 years ago. Only now, I was alone. The field pulsed with soft white light moving like breath. In the center, the ground was black and glassy as if lightning had struck there again and again. I crouched, pressing the tape recorder against the earth. The static hissed through it instantly. Then Lily's voice again, clearer this time. "Help me." The bracelet in my pocket grew hot. When I pulled it out, it was glowing faintly, the beads vibrating like they were alive. The light from the field bent toward it, drawn like metal to a magnet. Then from the far end of the clearing, I saw her. Lily. The same dress. The same dripping hair, but she wasn't solid. Her edges flickered, sometimes full, sometimes hollow, like she was being rewritten frame by frame. "Why did you come back?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I couldn't leave you here," I said. She smiled, small and broken. "You already did." I took a step closer. "Tell me what happened that night." She turned toward the trees, the glow spreading around her feet. "It called to us. The hum in the air. We thought it was the storm, but it was older than that. The field listens. Every year it wakes when August ends. And it took you?" Her eyes flickered, gray to white. "It doesn't take, it trades. One goes, one stays." My throat went dry. "That's what it meant." Lily nodded slowly. "You ran, so it kept me." The words hit like a blade. "You think I chose that? You didn't have to. It already knew who would stay." The wind shifted. The hum deepened, turning into a low thrumming that rattled my ribs. The trees bent inward, their branches shaking though no air moved. The stars above flickered, then went dark, one by one, until only the light from the field remained. Lily reached out her hand. "Nate," she whispered. "It wants balance. It always does." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to run. But this wasn't about escape anymore. It never had been. "What happens if I stay?" I asked quietly. Her expression softened. "Then it ends. And you?" She looked down. "Then I go." The light swelled, wrapping her in white fire. Her form blurred, dissolving into ripples. The hum became a scream, not pain but release. And then behind her something moved. At first I thought it was shadow. But shadows don't pulse. They don't breathe. This thing, and whatever it was, rippled like heat, every inch of it shifting static and half-formed faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. It was the field. It was everything that had been taken. The air tore open. The noise became unbearable. Voices whispering, crying, begging. They weren't ghosts. They were echoes, pieces of people left behind in the light, and at the center of it, Lily turned to me. "Don't let it remember you," she said. I didn't understand until it started changing shape. The thing was trying to form a face, my face. The hum reached a pitch that rattled my teeth. The ground cracked open beneath me, light spilling out. I grabbed the tape recorder, the hum feeding into it, looping back, building pressure. If it wanted my voice, it would get it. I hit record. "Take me," I said. The moment the words left my mouth, everything exploded. White, sound, weightlessness. The field swallowed itself, folding inward like a lung, exhaling. Every scream cut short, every light blinked out, then silence. When I opened my eyes, it was dawn. The sky was washed in pink and gold. The field was gone, just a plain stretch of dirt and ash. No hum, no glow, no static. In the middle of it all, the bracelet lay in the dust. Broken. I picked it up. The beads were cold. The tape recorder beside it was still running, the wheels turning. I pressed stop, then play, static, then a voice. Faint, distant. "Thank you." I smiled, or tried to. My throat burned. My hands were shaking. As I stood, something caught my eye. Across the clearing, near the tree line, footprints, bare, leading away from the field. Small ones. I followed them until they stopped at the road. And there, sitting in the mud, was a Polaroid, the last one. It showed the field, empty, bathed in early morning light, and just visible in the corner, half out of frame, Lily walking away, smiling. That night I went back home. The power worked again. The clocks moved. The hum was gone. For the first time in years, the air felt normal. I burned the tape just like she'd said, watched it curl and blacken until only the metal spool remained. The smell of melted plastic filled the air. Before I went to bed, I looked at the clock. August 31st, 11:58 p.m. I smiled to myself. Maybe it really was over. Then from somewhere inside the house, the radio clicked on. Soft static, then a voice, my voice, repeating the same words I'd said in the field.